Here we are in the final week of Advent, which is really like half a week of Advent. But so far this year this Advent, we have covered Christmas traditions from around the world. First, we talked about Advent traditions from around the world. Then we talked about the origin of Christmas decorations from around the world. Last weekend, we talked about Christmas food traditions from around the world. And along the way, we've sprinkled in a few Christmas carols. And today we're going to be talking about the Christmas traditions of gift giving. Simply put, the reason why we associate gift giving with Christmas is because of the three wise men. They're down here right in front of me. Three wise men who come from the east to give Jesus gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And we're going to talk more about them when we get to their actual feast day in a couple of weeks on the Epiphany. But of course, that tradition of giving gifts has been extended to mean a bunch of different things throughout the course of history. And when it comes to gift giving, nobody is more famous than Santa Claus. And Santa Claus comes to us through an interesting chain of events. So St. Nicholas was born in the early 4th century. So we're talking, over 1600 years ago. And he was born into a wealthy family in the town of Patara, which is in modern-day Turkey. And when his parents died, Nicholas took all of his family money and he gave it to the poor who were living in his hometown. And he became a monk when he was only age 17, and shortly after he was ordained a priest. While he was still in his 20s, and I can't imagine this, he was appointed Archbishop of Myra, which is an ancient city in Turkey. And there's many stories about Nicholas's time as archbishop. He is said to have saved many lives. He is said to have had power to heal the sick. And other than Mary, the Mother of God herself, St. Nicholas is the most common patron saint across the entire world. This is mostly, we don't see this a whole lot in Nebraska because we don't have a whole lot of Italian and Turkish and Greek heritage in our state, but where places with those heritages are present, St. Nicholas is like a main character. Nicholas is the patron saint of sailors, and this is tied to a particular legend regarding St. Nicholas, where some sailors were caught in a storm off the coast of Turkey, and the storm was raging all around them, and they were terrified that they were going to sink, and they prayed to St. Nicholas, and suddenly he was there standing on the deck of their ship in front of them. And so St. Nicholas ordered the sea to be calm, and the storm died away, and they were able to get their ship safely to port. And to this day, the sailors of the Italian city of Bari carry a statue of St. Nicholas to the cathedral, from the cathedral out to the sea every year on his feast days, so that St. Nicholas can bless the waters and give them safe voyages throughout the year. Another of my favorite St. Nicholas stories, this is how he became the patron saint of children. So St. Nicholas is the patron saint of children, and there's the crazy story of a famine that broke out where 3 children were abducted by the butcher, and they were pickled in barrels to be sold as ham. And St. Nicholas came along and he raised them from the dead, and you can see this in a lot of depictions of him in artwork. He's there, with his arms outstretched in front of people who are standing in barrels up to their waist. Well, that's what it's about. It's about the 3 children who were pickled. But anyways, St. Nicholas is also the patron saint of merchants and archers and brewers and pawnbrokers and unmarried people and students. In England alone, there are over 500 churches dedicated to the name of St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas is the patron saint of Russia and Greece and, of course, Turkey. St. Nicholas is also the patron saint of New York City. But what Nicholas was most known for was his generosity. And this is where we kind of get the idea of gift giving associated with St. Nicholas. This is the story of the 3 young women. And this is back in a time when Nicholas lived, where a man would propose to a woman, and that woman's father would then agree to give his daughter in marriage. And it would also be the father of the bride's duty to pay a dowry. And this is a sort of a payment in money or in property that was designed to ensure that the bride's family also had a stake in the marriage, that she wasn't just marrying this person for money. And this might sound, out of date to modern ears, but we still actually do it today in most places. It's the bride's family that pays for the wedding. So The problem here, though, is that the man with these 3 daughters, in the story of St. Nicholas, he had once been wealthy, but he'd lost his fortune, and now he couldn't pay their dowry, and that would likely mean that his daughters would have to be sold into slavery in order to pay off the dowry. So St. Nicholas heard about these 3 girls, and he went to their father, and he offered to pay for the weddings, and the father refused because in his pride he'd been used to having plenty of money to go around, and having formerly been wealthy, he was determined to raise the money on his own for his daughter's dowries, but it was pretty much hopeless. So one night, St. Nicholas was passing by their house, and the window was open, and so as the legend goes, he threw in a small bag of gold coins that would be enough to pay for the first daughter's dowry, and did the same thing when it came for the second daughter to get married. And the father of the 3 daughters wanted to find out where this magic money was coming from, who the anonymous benefactor was, so he waited in hiding for him, and when Nicholas came to deliver the money for the third daughter's dowry, the father caught him. And Nicholas was embarrassed. He didn't want anybody to know that he was the one that was supporting the 3 girls, and so he begged the father not to tell anybody and to give glory to God alone. Just give thanks to God. Well, the father obviously must have told somebody, because we have the tradition coming down to us today. The story goes that the girls' shoes and socks were sitting by the fireplace drying out, and the bags of gold happened to land right in their shoes. And this should sound at least a little bit familiar, because this is where we get the tradition of hanging up stockings by the fireplace on the mantle and finding gifts in them from Santa Claus. Of course, not everybody has a fireplace, so St. Nicholas has been known to also leave presents under the Christmas tree. St. Nicholas was exiled from Myra, and he was later put into prison during the persecution of Christians by the Roman Emperor Diocletian. But he was released in the time of the later Emperor Constantine, who had converted to Christianity. And finally, St. Nicholas died sometime around the year 345 AD, and he was almost immediately declared a saint. St. Nicholas is loved and revered all across the world. Like I said, the only saint really that receives more attention than him is Mary when it comes to a worldwide perspective. So let's look at some St. Nicholas traditions from around the world. When I was growing up, we knew it was close to Christmas time. One of our favorite parts of decorating the house was Mom had these little, I don't know if they were porcelain or what they're made out of, but these little 4-inch or so tall figurines of Santa Claus. And there's between 6 and 10 of them. I can't remember how many exactly, but each of them was a different depiction of Santa from around the world. These are kind of the inspiration for this series of homilies in the first place. But so there was the one from the United States where he's sitting in the department store, a department store chair, waiting for somebody to sit on his lap. He looks just like Santa Claus. There's one where in Poland, I know he is dressed in black. He's black with red stripes. The French Santa Claus was named Père Noël, which is French for Father Christmas, and of course the version of Santa Claus from the UK is also called Father Christmas, but in English, not in French. We all thought that the Irish, this is a thing that comes up every year. We have a family, group chat. And the Irish Santa is hilarious because the Irish Santa is literally, it says on there, St. Patrick. Which they just changed Santa Claus to St. Patrick, even though it's a completely different saint. But anyways, the statue of St. Patrick looks just like Santa Claus, but he's wearing green instead of red. And for some reason, instead of a stocking hat, he's wearing a green top hat, so he looks like a leprechaun or something. But Mom gets those out and takes a picture of them every year and sends it to us. Then there is the Santa from Holland. And this Santa's name was Sinterklaas, which is just Dutch for St. Nicholas. And that's actually where the name Santa Claus comes from. In New York City, which was originally a Dutch colony, Americans thought that the Dutch were actually saying Santa Claus instead of Sinterklaas, which we eventually butchered into Santa Claus, and that's the name that we know and love today. But Santa Claus just means St. Nicholas. Some claim that Santa's reindeer were inspired by the legends of Norse gods, and that might very well be the case. But the first mention of reindeer associated with Santa comes to us in the year 1822 from the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, which was written by Clement Clark Moore. And this poem is what we call today, it's known today as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And this is where we get the idea of there being 8 reindeer. But there wasn't always 8 throughout history. In 1902, Frank Baum, the author of The Wizard of Oz, he wrote a novel that was titled The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. And in this book, Santa has a team of 10 reindeer. And then we add in Rudolph in the 1940s popular song. J.R.R. Tolkien, who's one of my favorite authors, the author of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he wrote annual letters to his children that told about how Father Christmas, what they called in the UK Santa Claus, Father Christmas teams up with the polar bear to defeat armies of goblins every year. They're in this constant war against the goblins. And these letters were curated by his children, and they're compiled in a book titled Letters from Father Christmas that you can actually purchase to this day. In January of 1863, the magazine Harper's Weekly published the first illustration of St. Nicholas by a man named Thomas Nast. In this first illustration, though, St. Nicholas was wearing the Stars and the Stripes, believe it or not, from the American flag. But over the next 20 years, every year leading up to the Christmas season, this same artist, Thomas Nast, would continue to draw Santa Claus, and his works gained in popularity. And finally, on January 1st, 1881, Harper's Weekly published his most famous image of Santa, which is, got an armful of toys, got a big round belly, he's smoking a pipe. And this has basically become the basis for all modern interpretations of what Santa looks like. The final nail in that coffin of what nailed down our idea of what Santa looks like is the 1931 Coca-Cola ad that was drawn by Dutch artist Haddon Sundblom, and it shows that's the famous Santa Claus drinking Coca-Cola from a bottle. And that is sort of the final thing that guaranteed that would be our understanding of Santa Claus forever. It seems that every European country, though, has their version of Santa. However, the similarities between them they're striking. All of them are kind and generous. All of them bring gifts. And these similarities all point to there being one singular origin story for all of these different Santa traditions, and that is, of course, St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas simply is Santa Claus. There's a couple of additional figures that are a little more interesting, a little more unusual to us anyways, when it comes to gift giving. In some countries, like parts of Austria and parts of Germany, the present giver isn't St. Nicholas. It is a golden-haired baby, sometimes a girl, sometimes with wings, called the Christkind, or the Christkindl, who symbolizes the newborn baby Jesus. And German settlers in the United States brought their stories of the Christkindl, and they became known as Christkindl, which we just associate with Santa Claus anyways. So that's where the name Christkindl comes from. Then there is also another German tradition called the Belsnickle. The Belsnickle was a sort of a kind of a creepy wild man that would show up to your house, and he would make sure that you knew your prayers, and if you could recite your prayers, then you would receive a small prize like some candy or some fruit or some nuts or something like that. But if you didn't pass the test of saying your prayers correctly, you got swatted with a tree branch by him. So it's a very German tradition. I have a friend with very German roots, and when they were little, and this is, somebody my age, so somebody in their 40s, they were told when they were little, if they misbehaved leading up to Christmas, a guy named Hans Wolf would come and put you in a burlap sack and kidnap you. And there's all kinds of other sort of mean characters that show up throughout history and throughout cultures. And all of these more sinister traditions are reminders of this time of year and what this time of year really means. That we ought to be thinking about if we've been naughty or nice. We ought to be thinking about the the state of our soul and our salvation as we end the year. But all of this kind of seems to beg the question, what does St. Nicholas have to do with Christmas? What does he have to do with the birth of Jesus? And the short answer is nothing. St. Nicholas doesn't have anything to do with Christmas. The reason we associate the two is because the Feast of St. Nicholas is on December 6th, and it's part of one big festive season. The word holiday simply means holy day. So when we say happy holidays as Catholics, we actually mean it, like multiple holy days. There are a lot of holy days this time of year. We have the feast day of St. Nicholas, the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception on December 8th, Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe on December 12th, Christmas on the 25th, New Year's Day, where we celebrate the Mary, the Mother of God, on January 1st, Feast of the Holy Family, the first Sunday after Christmas, the Feast of the Epiphany, the second Sunday after Christmas, and the Baptism of Jesus, the third Sunday after Christmas. And the traditional end of the Christmas season isn't until all the way on February 2nd when we celebrate the Feast of the Presentation of Jesus. So that's a lot of holy days. And that's why we say happy holidays. And it's not unchristian to say happy holidays. To only focus on Christmas this time of year is to sort of lose a lot of the richness of our history. When we shove all of these things into a single day on Christmas, we no doubt lose track of the real meaning of Christmas, and we conflate Christmas with all of these other things like giving gifts, which it doesn't have much to do with. And so it's good to remind ourselves that exchanging gifts is only one aspect of the holiday season. When I was growing up, we did a few special things to sort of drive that point home, and to make an effort to call to mind that there are in fact many holidays, many holy days to celebrate this time of year, rather than just throwing them all into the same Christmas basket. And I think learning about these different holidays helped us to learn the meaning of Christmas far, far better than just waiting to open presents on Christmas morning. So in my house, Santa did not come on Christmas Eve. He came on December 6th. And to me, this just made a lot of sense. December 6th is St. Nicholas's feast day, after all. And so to get ready for the big day, Mom would make us new stockings every year. And she would sew them for us, sew them up some new ones. I've got probably a dozen of them sitting around somewhere. And to get ready, she would, when we came back from school that day, usually lands on a weekday, but on December 6th, our stockings would be full. And I think my classmates might have been jealous of us because we got our presents 2.5 weeks early, but our stockings, they usually had some toys in them, or they were big, so they usually had candy in them. We would get the gold, the chocolate coins that are covered in gold foil to sort of represent, the money that St. Nicholas threw through the window. In some countries, the gold coins are represented by tangerines or oranges that you'd get in your stocking. We would also get things in our stockings that we would actually need and use, things like school supplies, pencils, things like that, chapstick, pajamas, socks. And then after we opened our stockings, we would sit down as a family and we would drink hot chocolate together, not just any hot chocolate, but homemade hot chocolate from scratch. And I was well into my 30s when my mom stopped making and mailing me my stocking every year. But if we think of it this way and ask ourselves the question, what is Christmas about? Is it about St. Nicholas? Is it about Santa Claus? And the answer is no. It's about the birth of Jesus. And by celebrating St. Nicholas early, I think it reminded our family that Christmas isn't about presents. It's about Jesus coming to this world to save us. The reason that we did that was so that we could share and imitate the generosity of God, who is so generous that he gave us his only son at Christmas. Finally, we have this week's Christmas carol. So far, we've examined carols from England, from the United States, and from Germany. And this time we're going to France to hear Un flambeau, Jeanette, Isabella, which is English for Bring a Torch, Jeanette, Isabella. And this is another one of my favorite Christmas songs. It holds a soft spot in my heart because my mother and sister played this song one Christmas Eve at Mass as a flute and a piano duet, and it's quite beautiful. So this song comes to us from the Provence region in the south of France, and it was rooted in 14th century French dance music, so it's kind of an upbeat tune, and it was used in all sorts of musical occasions, including French drinking bar songs. And the first time it appears in writing as a hymn is in a 1553 book of French Christmas carols, but it was probably taught for decades, maybe even centuries before that. This song is the basis for the long-held French tradition, at least in Provence, which is the southern part of France, of the tradition of the local children leading a procession to midnight mass on Christmas Eve, dressed as shepherds and as milkmaids, and the children would lead this parade carrying candles to light the way to the church. And you'll see this reflected in the song. So I'm going to do an overview of the verses and then read you the words of the verses, but the lyrics of the song, the first verse begins with calling for the village girls, Jeanette and Isabella, to bring light to the stable for Mary and Jesus. The next verse has the whole village knocking at the door, bringing cakes and treats for baby Jesus. Verse 3 is a scolding for all the racket that the baby is trying to sleep. And verse 4, the baby settles down and is dreaming and smiling in his sleep. So here's the words. Bring a torch, Jeanette, Isabella, bring a torch to the cradle run. It is Jesus, good folk of the village. Christ is born and Mary's calling. Ah, ah, beautiful is the mother. Ah, ah, beautiful is her son. Who is that knocking on the door? Who is it knocking like that? Open up, we've arranged on the platter lovely cakes that we've brought here. Knock, knock, open the door for us. Knock, knock, let us celebrate. It is wrong when the child is sleeping. It is wrong to talk so loud. Silence all as you gather around, lest your noise should waken Jesus. Hush, hush, see how fast he slumbers. Hush, hush, see how fast he sleeps. Softly to the little stable, softly for a moment come. Look and see how charming is Jesus, how he is white, his cheeks are rosy. Hush, hush, see how the child is sleeping. Hush, hush, see how he smiles in his dreams. The best version that I could find of this song didn't have all 4 verses, but we're going to listen to it anyways. But you'll get the tune stuck in your head. But the words are from a very simple message, sort of managing to contain your excitement about the birth of Jesus while allowing the child to sleep in peace and to dream. And this is the type of quiet excitement that we should have as we're just a couple of days away from the birth of our Savior.